Look, this is one of the most fundamental challenges facing Israel in the region. There's this kind of immediate tactical threat from Hamas in Gaza, and this broader strategic and indeed nuclear threat from Iran, from Hamas in Gaza, and then this broader strategic threat, which is repeatedly called for Israel's destruction. I mean, the harsh reality is that I think it's highly unlikely that Israel can convince Hamas or Iran to abandon their stated goals through diplomatic means. But at the same time, look, because Hamas's charter fundamentally explicitly calls for Israel's destruction. And while they've moderated their rhetoric over the years, here and there, their actions, the October 7th attack, of course, demonstrates this unwillingness to back down. And Iran's leadership has made similar claims, for the destruction of Israel. Supreme Leader Khamenei has called Israel a cancerous tumor that must be, quote, eliminated. But, there is this multifaceted approach. Look, there always been military deterrence. Israel has overwhelming military superiority to deter attacks from Iran. You saw what happened earlier this year with those missile attacks. Like, it was very scary for Israelis, but they pretty much quashed it with the U.S., with other allies like Saudi Arabia, like Jordan. They have military deterrence. But at the same time, they're not waiting on deterrence. They're going after all of Iranian's proxies, weakening Hezbollah, weakening Hamas. Now they're going after the Houthis. I mean, Israel isn't sitting on its hands and saying deterrence, which means we can deter you. They're going after and destroy. There's also international pressure. Israel has, shall we say, not a lot of goodwill in the international community. But I think when it comes to Iran, there's a pretty united front, particularly in the Middle East, about Iran being a threat. Then there's that regional normalization. The Abraham Accords is this kind of strategic shift to build broader regional relations between Israel and its neighbors. So far, it's Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Sudan. But I think, this Abraham Accords, building broader regional acceptance without resolving the Palestinian issue, it might have worked before October 7th. I don't know how it's going to work now, because obviously Saudi Arabia is the big linchpin in this, and Saudi Arabia is not going to, or at least MBS, the Crown Prince, says that he is not going to make a deal. Saudi Arabia won't make a deal with Israel until there is some kind of horizon for a Palestinian state. It may not be the Palestinian state that people want it to be, but without something, it's a non-starter for Saudi Arabia. And then there's obviously intelligence and, covert operations. But the challenge is that they all address the symptoms rather than this kind of ideological core about Israel's right to exist. True change may require, I think, generational shifts in attitudes and leadership, but certainly in this kind of post-October 7th Gaza climate and atmosphere, I'm not sure. There are in Gaza, any lasting solution needs political alternatives to Hamas. That doesn't look like anybody's really stepping up. And then you have these radicaling populations on both sides. President Trump does want this deal with Saudi Arabia. Again, if you're not redressing the underlying grievances, good luck.